Coming to you direct from the nerve center of the galaxy's greatest comic. This is the 2000 AD Thrillcast.
Borag Thung, Earthlets, and welcome to another episode of the 2000 AD Thrillcast. Now, if you've enjoyed one of the Stone Cold classic 2000 AD covers of the early 1980s, then you have, at least in part, Robin Smith to thank. As art editor, Robin was part of the team under editor Steve McManus that ushered in the first golden age of the galaxy's greatest comics, with strips like Nemesis the Warlock, Slain, Rogue Trooper, and Meltdown Man knocking the socks off young Earthlets and cementing 2000 AD's reputation as a comics powerhouse. From creating adverts, comic store standees, and the famous star scans of 2000 AD droids, to weathering strikes, squabbles, and lost portfolios. With his colleagues, Robin helped make 2000 AD look as good as it did during those early halcyon days. As well as helping develop new artistic talent such as Alan Davis and Cliff Robinson, Robin is also an artist in his own right, with dozens of covers under his belt, as well as episodes of Judge Dredd, Future Shocks, and the dystopian SF series Bad City Blue, before going on to co-create the cult character The Bogeyman with John Wagner and Alan Grant. In the first of a two-part chat, the 2000 AD Thrillcast travelled down to the southeast to chat with Robin about his years at 2000 AD.
Let's just start off by talking a bit about your background, because we just talked a little bit about it. But Port Sunlight is an interesting place to come from.
Well, Port Sunlight, my family lived in Port Sunlight for my grandparents lived there for 70 years.
Right.
I think, in the end.
Was that because of a connection to the
Lever Brothers?
Yeah.
My grandfather was an accountant for Lever Brothers.
Oh, right, okay.
And if you work for Lever Brothers, you got a house in the village.
Right.
So you got the sort of fantastic house in the village.
Yeah.
But probably the best council houses in the country, because they were really nice in a village with an open air heated swimming pool, with an art gallery, it's a lovely place.
Yeah. And in terms of your child, I mean, you mentioned the art gallery there. It's an obvious line to draw between having a resource like that as a child and your profession now, or was it more kind of it's always there? We sometimes go.
No, it was actually Ron Courtine, the guy that ran the pub in the village, was friendly with people on the American Air bases, so he used to come back with lots and lots of comics. Right. So from about 3 onwards in 1960. I just grew up on Marvel and DC comics, boxes and boxes of them. So I just loved comics from that age. So that's really I always liked comics.
So it wasn't the Grand Old Masters; it was the new Masters.
No, I did come to like pre-Raphaelite painting and things very much, and it's a fantastic place to go and look, because it is a great gallery. I recommend it to anybody. I mean, there's there's other good galleries around Merseyside and things, but so no, it was the comics that used to come from American bases.
Right, and was art the obvious thing that you wanted to do? Was it something that you wanted to do since you was?
Yeah, I always wanted to do art. Yeah.
Okay. What was your family's reaction to that? I'm always curious about what parents think of.
Well, my mother was a librarian,
Okay.
and as long as I read, I could read comics. Right. So because I read everything that was going. So I could read comics. No, there was no problems with that. My father was more difficult because he was an engineer.
Right.
And he said, "Oh, do you do art? Or you can do architecture." I go, "No, I don't want to do art. Commercial art of some sort. I'd want to do comics, but it'd be commercial art." So, yeah, it's commercial art because they hadn't invented graphics at that point.
Right.
So, they hadn't invented graphics; they just hadn't called it graphics.
Yeah. Tell me a bit about the process of how you actually came to be working as an artist. I mean, did you go to art school?
Well, we moved to Norfolk because my father went to work from Lever Brothers to Bird's Eye, which is part of Unilever.
Yeah.
And I went to art college there because you had to do foundation at the local college. Couldn't get a grant, so I had to do graphics at the local college. So I did that I left school at 17 and had finished art college by 21 and moved to London looking for a job.
Right. Okay.
In comics.
Dad was an engineer, Mum was a librarian, living in somewhere like Port Sunlight, grandfather an accountant. I mean, was this a kind of classic kind of northern middle class upbringing? or I mean,
I guess so. I mean, it's everybody's everybody has a profession. Everybody does a job, and my family's actually littered with accountants, and I'm almost innumerable. I'm actually not now, but I professed to be for many years because it's not something that ever appealed to me.
Yeah.
But I think I always liked art. I always liked graphic art. I always loved comics. I think it's probably comics. I mean, the other obviously, apart from the American comics, the British comics I had, one of the first one I can remember having was Play Hour. And I'm pretty certain that Colin White was working on it when I used to read Play Hour, from the discussions we've had of it.
Yeah.
And then it was TV comic, TV 21.
Yeah.
The only comic that was on subscription was Look and Learn, which obviously had fantastic artwork in it, which I think everybody came to appreciate later. Obviously slightly worthy, but it was fantastic, the stuff that was in there. And then it ended up with strips like the Trigon Empire and I can't remember this. It merged with Ranger in the way that comics got merged and things, which I obviously didn't know then, but obviously I came to understand later.
And in terms of the American stuff, what were the things that really caught your fancy?
I just liked it all. I liked everything, but I mean, I was lucky enough because of the age I was to have all as well as the DC. I grew up on all the very early Fantastic Fours, Spider-Mans. I remember seeing X-Men for the first time. Daredevil, I had loads of the first issues of Daredevil, loads of the first 10 issues, I would say. Yeah. And no, I haven't. I took them to the swap shop and bought Beatles albums with the proceeds, before you ask.
So you've kind of got this interest in comics, in graphics, in graphic design. You come to London looking for your first job.
Well, actually, what I wanted to do was go to art college, and
right.
I compromised on commercial art of some sort, so it's graphics. But that's because my wife's grandfather was the fine art professor of the Slade, and he decided that people going to art college and learning to draw was probably not the best idea, so everybody should do something vocational, so everybody should have a purpose. So he did actually go to his death thinking that all art students hated him for it. So hence you ended up doing a foundation, which is fantastic, and then 3 years of graphics. I mean, the 3 years of graphics I did were about how to write a business letter, as I recall, and use Pantone. It's that sort of, it was kind of, didn't really learn anything about drawing, but it was still great fun.
I'm interested in that element of compromise you mentioned about commercial art, because one thing I noticed in interviews you've done before, and certainly my experience of your work in 2000 AD with so many of the star scans and the adverts that you did. You were even doing adverts for the Transformers.
Title. I draw lots of that stuff.
Did you always see yourself as kind of straddling that kind of commercial and creative?
I think I just drew anything that was going.
Right.
I've always done freelance. I've always done quite a lot of advertising and marketing stuff, just because you get the opportunity to do it, and you just do anything that's going, really.
Sure.
I mean, sadly, I was once asked if I wanted to go and do some storyboards, and I wasn't told what it was for, and I was drawing a transforming robot story for Dave Hunt on Eagle. I can't remember what this thing was at the end of Eagle. I think it was Eagle anyway. It was definitely Dave Hunt. And in fact, what I didn't go and draw was didn't go and do the visualising for the Division Bell, the Pink Floyd sleeve. So you end up doing whatever comes first, don't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, you kind of I used to do all the. You look at the covers I did. I was the art editor.
Yeah, exactly.
So if they needed a Bublicious cover with some Star Wars stuff on it, I'm going to do it because it's easier for us to do it in the office and do it like that.
So what was your first proper job? If you need, you can call it a proper job. I don't know.
You mean first proper job?
Straight out of art college.
Well, my first proper job out of art college was 2000 AD.
Right.
I went to the Kingsreach Tower after going to these various. I went through the Artists and Writers Yearbook at the local library, and it was out of date. And I wrote to all the publishers of comics I could find in it, asking for an interview because I wanted to work to learn more about comics and how they're produced. Yeah. All the letters ended up in IPC. Well, DC Thompson, I think, offered me an interview, and IPC had sort of amalgamated two or three different companies. So basically, all my applications or asked, letters requesting at least an interview, ended up in the same place. So I moved to London, and 3 weeks later I had an interview with Kelvin Gosnell, I think Bob Bartholomew, who was the group editor or maybe the publisher, and I'm trying to think somebody else. That was probably Steve McManus, because he just started working on 2000 and I got a job on 2000.
Right.
And Kelvin looked at my portfolio and said, you should go and work in advertising, because if you come here you'll just end up bodging things. I thought, that sounds good to me. on a very good salary as well.
Without giving too much away, what kind of rate were you on as, first job, straight about
Well,
school?
I can't remember,
Right.
but I know that I was getting paid more than any of my friends that were out of college.
Right.
They were working in advertising, marketing. It was a decent salary. It was a decent salary with a pension and great sick pay benefits, training. You did the IPC. We called it the indoctrination course, but I think it was induction, where you had to get on the coach and go out to the printers with everybody else. You go and see how the guys that did the process work. So you learned how black and white artwork was shot with the old kind of brass and walnut camera. It was great. So you learned all of it like that.
Because the process now is so fundamentally different. How to produce comics. So for those of us who are listening and perhaps a bit younger and don't remember the old school way of doing things, what was the process of putting a comic together?
Well, the process was, because there were letterpress comics, which means they were all printed from line plates. And the process was, for the artwork, it had to be drawn on Bristol board between 1.5 and 1 3/4 up. Maybe Ian Gibson used to sometimes draw twice up, but pretty much over scale, so it could be lettered. Drawn with Indian ink, permanent, with a brush, with a pen, on, as I said, plate finished Bristol board. And it was drawn with Indian inks, so when the cleaner came into the office and poured a cup of coffee over it, it could be wiped clean without losing the image. And this is absolutely true.
Right.
So it always had to be permanent. But when you finished a page of artwork and it went to the letterers, obviously you only had to draw the artwork and put it on a piece of board. Now artists have to spend $2,000 on a Mac computer, scan it themselves, and do all the process work for the publisher. So it was quite we could do it a bit cheaper and a bit easier in those days.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, before we started recording, we were chatting about, I don't know, a certain degree of nostalgia for the way these companies used to operate, because it's not just that for artists and writers things are very different now, but also for editorial things are very, very different. What was the kind of, I don't know, the hierarchy, the structure, the you're coming in as a somebody straight out of art college. Where did you slot into this?
Well, as we had on the staff, Steve was the editor, Steve McManus. Roy Preston was the sub. Colin Wyatt was the art editor, and I was Colin's assistant.
Yeah.
And then obviously you get the structure over that. So then there's the managing editor, which was Barry Tomlinson, was the editor of the whole of the Youth Club. I think he prefers football comics, if we're truthful about this. And it was hierarchical from then on. So basically, if somebody complained to the top, it all came right down to us. Right. And Steve used to take much of the flak because he was the editor, obviously. But I mean, we all felt for him a lot and things. And it was good. But the weirdest thing when you started working was the culture of going out to the pub at lunchtime, particularly with Roy Preston and his gin and tonics. It was a really weird thing. And of course, the Kingsreach Tower subsidised canteen, even fantastic restaurant. It's great. You could eat cheap. Even it was just everything was there, and you just got in there with a fantastic view from the 20th floor of the building over the city. And it was pretty okay working. It was good. But obviously we had. It's a weekly comic, 52 times a year. It's got to be published. So obviously there's, you just have to stay on it. Yeah. I don't think we missed any. Maybe when the strike there's a couple of issues, but I don't think we missed any in the years I worked there. So
just referencing that pub, what did you call it? The Slug and Gristle.
Yeah, John Wagner christened it that. It was actually called the Railway Tavern. I tried to remember this the other day. And I think you mentioned something to me about your offices having water running down the walls.
Yeah, the old ones, yeah.
Yeah, well, Lucy, my wife, had never been in the Slug and Gristle till it was just closing. They were turning it into a wine bar. And we were having to go down to South London for something. And I said, look, some of the guys are in there, let's just pop in for a drink. There's a thunderstorm, water came down the walls, everything, all the electrics went. So that was it. She saw the end of the Slug and Gristle. But it used to be, we'd go over there at lunchtimes and play pool. If you went in order of who was best at pool, I would say that Tom Frame was definitely best at pool, but then he'd spent more time in pubs.
Right, yeah.
John Wagner was pretty damn good at pool. The rest of us were, I think we were all pretty good, actually. Simon Geller was the pinball wizard. I didn't understand you could be taught to make a pinball machine do your will.
Right.
He did it. He should have showed people how to do it. He'd go in, he'd set up the machine for as many free games as anybody wanted for the next 2 hours. Really and honestly, that's the thing. Unfortunate, but there was that thing. It was a bit weird going to the pub, but we did. We always got back, and or generally got back, and if we had to work, and you wouldn't do it if it was deadline day or whatever. But we used to do these unfortunate things. Like we decided it would be a good idea to have a pool tournament against Marvel. So we decided we were obviously much better at pool.
Yeah.
And we did drinking and things, and they were all a bit sort of nicer and a bit sort of bit sort of mummy's boys, I think was the thing. So we organised this thing. We get there. I remember making this trophy. I scrounged a pool ball off the publican. I got a great big nut. I screwed the thing on. I got one of those little dread figurines. I sprayed the thing. It was a beautiful thing. They turned up with an inflatable Spider-Man sort of. You can push it over and it'll stand up again.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought, this is just rubbish. Okay, but we proceeded to play pool. We played 4 games of. We played singles first. Then we had to stop for drink, and then we played doubles afterwards. And we just carried on drinking, and they didn't. and unfortunately, we got beaten. And the same thing happened the next 2 years. So we couldn't not do the drinking. It was good fun, though.
I mean, again, that very kind of romantic notion of publishing lunches and just heading down the pub for a few hours. I think it's in Steve McManus's book. He says we'd guiltily look at the clock and it'd say 2:30. And probably need to go back to work.
Well, that's when the pubs closed. Remember?
Oh, right.
Think about it. Remember, pubs fortunately closed. If we needed to carry on, this was the worst thing. It was usually if you went out for a lunch with an agent or you went out with one of the artists or whatever. The only place you could drink in the afternoons was this City Golf Club, which is one of the city sort of press clubs behind Fleet Street. And somebody had membership. I think Steve probably had membership, but we'd go to the City Golf Club and they had a pool table and a ticket tape machine. And we'd end up playing pool with the English desk of the National Enquirer. National Enquirer? Yeah, National Enquirer.
Yeah.
It was this bloke called Canadian, no, American, was he Canadian? Bloke called Noel. And he'd do things like, oh, you beat me, we'll play a tenner a corner. It was all this sort of, and then you go out in the evening, you carry on and you go to, and this is how Tom Frame got lost with the journalist Hugh McIlvenney once for several days with some artwork.
Okay.
It was a continuation of one of these days.
Explain, man. I need to know more about that.
Well, all I can say is, as I recall, Tom had a portfolio of artwork. He ends up going off with Hugh McIlvenney, who I think owned a restaurant at the time. Hugh McIlvenney was a respected and very good sports journalist. I'm going to say he worked for the Times, or I can't remember whether he worked. I don't think he worked for the Guardian. He worked for one of the newspapers anyway. He and Tom hit off. They went off. They went to his restaurant. They ended up going out, and Tom just disappeared. But with a portfolio with some of Mick McMahon's Judge Dredd story that was supposed to be lettered. I mean, this is the stuff that everybody's always talked about, right?
Yeah.
I know when Tom came to, it was in the hotel at St Catherine's Dock, which was the one that's featured in what's the gangster film with Bob Hoskins and Helen Mirren? You can insert the
Yes, yeah. I'll put that in at a later date.
Good Friday.
Good Friday. Yeah.
Okay. Longer Friday. He turns up there, but with no portfolio of artwork, right? And so it's that thing. We're desperate because we need the artwork still. Mick actually redraws it same size, which is no mean feat, over I think probably a weekend, would be 6 pages of artwork.
Yeah.
So he redraws it. Now I'm in Tufnell Park, which is just up the hill from Kentish Town. So I went down to Tom's normal pub, the Assembly House in Kentish Town, and I tried to find they said, well, he was in here earlier at some point in that evening. He was here, and he seemed to be carrying something. It's not here. And I thought, well, we'll go around. So I walked up, and there was a pizza takeaway. I went to the pizza takeaway, and he said, oh, is this yours? And there it was. It managed to get to the pizza place. So at some point over that period, that's where the artwork was. But it's too late by then, because Mick had redrawn it. I can't remember if he got the original relettered or...
The Assembly House seems to be the kind of crux of so many similar stories, because there's the one about the City of the Damned artwork, that it was when Steve and Tom had been out in the Assembly House. And
well, I think Steve was hanging at Dylan's for ages.
Yeah.
At Tom's for ages. And it was... do you know what? I could find Tom there at any time.
Right.
Okay, so much so that my older daughter, who was studying medicine at UCL, used to have to go up to the Whittington Hospital in Archway. It's one of the hospitals she's based in.
Yeah.
And ever since then, she'd go past, and this is these many years later, she still goes past her, and she still says hello, Tom, because it's a family tradition. And it's kind of like, and people go, what are you doing there? So I'm saying hello to Tom, who is a really good friend of my dad's. Oh, is he in that? No, he's actually dead, but his sort of spirit's probably lingered on.
More than likely. So, you became art editor in what, 1980?
When Colin,
Right.
you see, Colin's fantastic Disney artist, and he did fantastic young children's stuff and things, and he really wanted to do that.
Yeah.
So he left, and I got to be art editor. But I mean, he'd let me do lots of stuff before that, and Doug Church, who was the group art editor, always let me do stuff. He'd always come and get me to do stuff for other comics and around the place and things, which was good. Only because he knew I liked that stuff more than he probably did. So
at this stage, when you step up to this position, how do things change? Obviously, you become in charge of a lot more, but is it just that you get to call any shots now, or is it just that your workload increases?
No, I was doing exactly pretty much the same as I was already doing. The only thing is, I got to be in charge of the stationery order. So, no, I did. Cole let me, because the thing is, Cole let me, because Alan was working, and Alan and I worked, Steve had to do the boring stuff, like he had to deal with the gobby writers usually, wouldn't give him a lot of misery, whereas Alan and I got on with doing the rest of it and things, and that was great, because working with Alan was terrific. So that was
Alan Grant,
Then Alan left, and Bert worked there for a while. Then he went off to do computer magazines. Then we had another sub, which was a guy called Simon Gallup, who's the pinball expert, and he was great fun, because he'd come from I say it was my guy. It was one of the teenage girl magazines and things, so he had a different approach to it. Things we had great fun. But it's when all those really crass straplines started appearing on 2000 AD covers. What's a Helltrek, or what's a dinosaur called a Helltrek? Meals on Wheels. Because what we do is we do whatever we're supposed to be doing during the day, and then at the end of the day, we'd get the cover roughs out and we'd kind of come up with straplines for them. So it's that sort of sometimes okay, sometimes fun. But it was fun basically.
Yeah. There is a notable change around 1980, 1981, where, and this is something we'll come on to later, where the tone of 2000 AD seems to go from, still being rebellious and a bit different, but still clearly a comic book, still part of the IPC stable, to much more having its own identity. And it always seemed to be reflected in the covers. They seem much more bullish.
Well, everything was falling away from us at the time, remember, because they didn't like 2000 AD. If they could have closed, they thought 2000 AD would last as long as the science fiction craze. It's a bit like that thing with guitar groups or ads, we're not going to hire the Beatles, famously, or whatever the record label said. And it just kept going, and it became more and more successful. And we had the idea of doing reprinted albums, because we looked at lots of the European anthology titles, because they came in with agents and things. And we were always saying, why don't we do thicker, why don't we do a sort of not slightly adult, but slightly better production values, and do sort of stuff like that instead of graphic novel, not called graphic novels then, but collections and things. So even before Titan started doing, we suggested it, but they still just wanted to do 52 comics, an annual and a summer special, and that's what IPC was used to doing with boys' comics.
Yeah.
And it was, they were still definitely part of the juveniles group, and it was boys' stuff. And it it was Battle, Whizzer and Chips. They were all given equal weight. And if anything, there was a certain leaning towards Roy the Rovers and Tiger. I can't imagine why that would be. So it was weird. But what happened, I think, is that we kind of just kept doing what we were doing. And also, there was an element of Steve was actually very good at being diplomatic, and we didn't try and sneak things in. That's nobody did that sort of thing on purpose because that was inappropriate.
Yeah.
But we did kind of try and justify everything we did, and when there was trouble and things, they ended up sort of not being so bad about it.
Because there's a in the interview you did with Dave Bishop a few years ago, there's the bit with Kev O'Neill popping.
Oh, the Inri.
On the top of somebody being crucified.
Yeah, it was on a cover, and it was well, the thing is, I felt bad about that at the time, I suppose. But the thing is, and Kev knew this, that you can do it, but of course, if you put a bit of Catholic symbolism on the front of the cover, somebody's going to cause trouble. He knew that. Kev's a Catholic. I mean, they're all, remember how many of them are Irish Catholics that were working there.
Yeah.
I knew what it was straight away. It was that, it's that, and it was just, it had to go, and it was just unfortunate, but it's just going to cause an immense amount of upset otherwise, because we got criticised for the robot rabbi in Robot Hunter.
Yeah.
There was complaints about that. And interestingly, nobody complained about the bishop one, but it was the rabbi that they complained about. Murray Whitehurst had a good go at us. And remember, there was that thing, they were slightly worried because of Action before 2000 there'd been so much trouble with it. They didn't really want to have a repeat of that. But I mean, some of it got silly. I remember there's one where, was it Kid, Sam Slade's assistant, has been inflated with helium when he's floating up, and he goes, "Help me, Sam, I'm going to pop." And the group editor decided that was we were trying to sneak in a reference to farting, and nobody had ever. And we're going, well, hang on, this is. Have we known now what Donald Trump would come up with as words?
Oh, yeah.
We know he's a whole different vocabulary, and it's stuff like that. Or I can remember I think it must just be Robot Hunter he had it in for, because I can remember being told that British heroes were not unshaven and had been made to white out stubble off Sam Slade's chin. So if you look at the reprint, you'll probably find this. He suddenly goes remarkably smooth shaven for an episode, and then he's back to normal after that.
There was things like censorship of smoke. IPC suddenly decided you couldn't have smoking in any way, shape, or form in their comics.
But I suppose you could argue he was vaping years ahead of the deal, having a talking cigar.
I mean, it's as the art editor. I mean, this was your job to bodge this stuff, really, wasn't it?
I did some pretty stuff I'm not proud of.
Right.
I did have to do stuff to artwork. The thing is, if it had to be done, we wouldn't get it out otherwise.
No.
And I know that people know that was the case and things. Steve had to make the decision if things had to be done, and I would facilitate that being done if we had to take something out or change something. I mean, I know there's a couple of times where people wanted stuff delineating and things, and I think there's a point where you say, well, no, because that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes there was artwork that just wasn't very good that had to be done. There was an artist, very amusingly, Mike Dorey used to come in, he's a fantastic artist, but he'd come in, he hadn't quite finished things, and he would finish a bit, and he would give me instruction on how to finish it for him. And I'd end up, he'd do the figures, and I'd end up having to put the clothes on, so he'd gone, leaving half it like that and things. It was just great. But he also drew on butcher's paper, so you try and keep the ink on it.
Right.
Yeah. No, so you did end up doing some sort of strange things, or you'd finish things that people have forgotten and things. And obviously the other thing is, you'd have to do all the boring things like changing lettering and doing that sort of stuff and things. And of course it was all done manually. There wasn't a computer in the building. I mean, there may have been one in the colour-proofing room that went for the women's magazines, but there was the nearest to a colour computer thing was a thing called I think it was called Quantel Paintbox, and you could go and use it somewhere, but I think it was £1,000 an hour or something. So we didn't have anything like that, and it was all done physically. They had manual typewriters, and everything else was done by hand. And I don't know how many typewriters Steve went through, because he could go through typewriters at quite a rate. 2 desks at least in 6 years.
Wow.
And typewriters. And Alan Grant, he used to have a rubber pad that went under the typewriters to quiet them down. I think we put 2 underneath Alan's, because when he went at it, it was pretty furious. So.
I mean, you do have to properly pound those things to when you're in flow, I guess.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently. He did, because the thing is, the secretary next door had a IBM golf ball. So
Right.
that was just coming, which is, have you ever seen a golf ball?
No.
No. Basically, it was the electric typewriter. The font is on a golf ball.
Oh, is that the thing that spins?
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
and
yeah.
they're faster.
Right.
But I remember one Christmas party, because we had Christmas parties in the office, which is always a mistake. Him having a race against the secretary in the next office. And she was touch type trained and things.
Yeah.
He used 2 fingers on each hand. He beat her by a country mile, made less mistakes. But it was noisier, obviously.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask about was the star scans you did of editorial staff and artists and writers.
Yeah.
Because there's ones of Carlos and Brett.
Yeah.
And Tom, obviously, and Richard Burton as well. And I mean, were these just a bit of fun, or was it like, crap, we've got a page we need to fill?
It was both, yeah.
Right.
It was the back covers. So,
Yeah.
and the thing is, because the back covers you had to have a colour page on the back cover, so you had to have something on it. And there could be ads, and if it wasn't an ad, you put something on it and things.
Sure.
And I think it was probably when Simon Geller was there, we started doing it. We were just having fun because the characters had been, some of them were done. We were doing those. Alan used to write those Thog stories.
Yeah.
And so it was a natural thing to start featuring some of the robots and things. And in fact, I've got some of this artwork back, because Rufus was selling it, and I got some back, and I didn't think I was going to get it, but I got the one of Mickey, I got the one of Brett. And I love the one of Brett, because to me, the one of Brett looks as much like Brett as anything I can possibly imagine Brett looking like. So,
Yeah.
you know, it was quite fun and things. And I think somebody did a book about Alan Moore a few years ago, and I actually updated a picture of Alan Moore as a wizard instead of a robot, but it was
Right.
basically the Alan Moore robot as a wizard. So, yeah, they were just things to do, and I would draw anything I was happy to. Have a go.
I wasn't reading at the time, but they were often sort of picked up in some of the 2080 monthlies that I would read, and they are tremendously evocative. Even though obviously they are a friendly portrait of somebody that you know, there's something about the fantasy of
being robots,
they're not being robots, and I think it's the fact that we still refer to ourselves
as drawers.
drawers.
Yeah, absolutely. With the Mickey one, I know for a fact that whatever it says in Oghams on it says Arsenal in Oghams, because I think I got Pat to translate it for me. That's definitely an Arsenal scarf he's got there.
Yeah.
I've got a picture, because I did that picture of Massimo, and I'll show you this later, but he sent me a picture of himself, done by himself, to show me what he really looks like.
Oh, right,
Which
okay.
is cool. So, yeah.
It's just there's just something about those. They're evocative and friendly.
Yeah, which probably annoys the hell out of people later on. No, I don't think so. I think because it was fun. Because it was fun. Because we didn't. The thing is, it was a comic, and the thing is, we didn't take it. It was done seriously and properly, but it didn't take itself too seriously. And I think I liked comics. I mean, my personal preference would be for, although there's been some fantastic full colour artwork over the years and things, I really like the idea of a cheap to buy and relatively cheap to produce black and white comic, which is basically aimed at kids. And if adults like it, that's nice too. But it was still aimed at kids. Remember, it was still aimed at sort of 11-year-olds when we were doing that stuff. As long as I worked on it, was aimed at 11-year-olds. Because
I mean, that's interesting. Cause you were there in that kind of 1980 to when did you leave?
1984.
84.
So I was 78 till 84.
So that's the period of kind of shall we call it adolescence? Because Steve McManus had come in and to freshen it up a little bit. It got a little stale over after the initial launch. And 1984 is around about the period when 2000 AD starts becoming more mature in its tone. It starts becoming no longer a kid's comic.
Well, I would say that it was always, I don't know. I'd say that there was always black humour. It was just how far you went with it. Because I still didn't think that 2000 AD should ever be on the top shelf. I always thought it should still be a comic, and I've always thought that about comics, because you lose readers, and you saw it at the 40th anniversary.
Yeah.
You saw a lot of people. that there's a big gap between the people that were there, who were the ones in the middle. Because they seem to be the same ones. They were, they were the kids and things. I mean, I think I said this to Rufus. There used to be this really annoying little ginger kid that used to come to these things, and oh yes, it was Rufus. And we were actually at that convention. I don't know whether you saw this at your convention. That there was this punk kid covered in badges.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
Rufus and he went past each other, and they just looked at each other up and down, nodded approvingly, and moved on. And this kid was about 10.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I suppose it did. I mean, the thing is, I don't think that you'd have to, if you were going to be Pat or Kevin, perhaps, you'd have to change what you did, because what you did was what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think of what sort of defines 2000 AD as being different to other comics, look at stuff like Nemesis. It's different to anything you could possibly imagine, and it's Pat and Kevin's vision of what could be in a comic.
I mean, I suppose every comic's got that is originally for children has got to make a decision at some point whether it's going to grow up with the readership it has, or rejuvenate itself for a new readership. Because it's something I've really noticed with the Phoenix.
I've looked at it occasionally. Yeah, absolutely.
Those guys are great because basically every 2 or 3 years they switch. They grow up to a certain extent, and then they switch back.
Yeah, I know.
And they seem to have the knack of that. Whereas 2000 AD seem to make a conscious. We're just going to keep going. We're going to grow up with everybody. And
I just think people lost their editorial sense in some ways. That was not because there wasn't IPC, because it was moving away from IPC, because there weren't the strict rules that said you've got to try and work with. It's much better creatively, I think, working within some guidelines, because you've got something to push against.
Sure.
You've got something to rebel or to try and go further than. I think that's it. And if everybody's got the same set of rules, then everybody's got to kind of compete. And that was one of the things that I used to really love when I started working, is that somebody would bring in some artwork. So David bring in his art. But these guys all had agents, but they'd still bring in their own artwork. This is the thing. Brian would come in and he'd just want to see what David just drawn. Mickey would come in, Carlos would be looking at what Mickey, it's like this whole thing that people are always looking to see what everybody else is doing, seeing what they could do next, and they come in. And I know this thing with Judge Dredd, I can remember Brian saying that he just about figured out what Mickey had done with what Judge Dredd looked like.
Yeah.
And Mickey would do something different with it, and he'd have to go, well, how the hell does that attach? And you go, well, it just does, because Mickey's drawn it like that, And it was that. And in fact, one of your colleagues asked me for an opinion about what Dredd looked like, and I couldn't really, I spent ages thinking about it, and I couldn't remember what it was. I was going to get back to him. And of course, it's the fact that Mickey did things like that. So, with Cursed Earth, Mickey managed to judge Dredd. It looks like he's got a demented set of Venetian blinds on his shoulder at some point, and the eagle looks like it's losing a few feathers. The things falling to pieces, and it's just great. And that was that sort of. And then Brian would have to draw that. He'd have to go, well, how can I do that and make it immaculate?
Well, you're the art editor during this period, and which is, for many people, is the classic period of 2000 AD, the early 80s, where you've got strips like the heyday of Nemesis and things like that. What's it like for you as art editor, seeing this artwork physically come through the door?
You just admire, you just like it. Yeah. The thing is, what you do is with that, it just comes in, and if it's all those guys are sort of consummate professionals, Kevin in particular, because he'd worked editorially, he'd come in with the logo on it, everything ready to go, and it would be exactly the right size. There'd be no problems with it.
Perfect for you then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was it. And Dave's the same thing. They know what they wanted for everything. Dave lettered it as well. It's that fantastic, and it was easy. But then it left you space to work with these slightly odder artwork that came through. I'm not even going to name anything, because everyone has their fans, and it's not fair. But when you look back, you can see the not quite as cutting edge artwork that used to get there. There'll be things, of course, more of. So, but you had the time, because the good stuff was dealt with it, looked after itself and things.
Yeah.
And you just get on with the rest of it and things. And there's still, even with good artwork, you still had to do some stuff. I remember one of my favourite moments was a Cole Wyatt moment, and I did remind Cole of this recently, so I think I can say this, which is he needed a logo for a Nemesis strip, and we didn't have a print for the logo, and it had come in unusually without the logo on it. And so he was looking for a logo for it, and he found a page of artwork, and he got it, and he ripped the logo off it. And I had to stand there and watch him and go, that's the artwork we're about to send to the printers. He just looked surprised. As a man that didn't believe in using a ruler, you use the edge of a desk with a scalpel, you know. It was very funny. Because there's nothing, I tell you what, I dug some old artwork out the other day, and it was a few little problems with it, and I thought the only thing I can do is I can repair artwork.
You were also in charge of the subs pile. So when Steve mentioned in his book that when people would send in submissions looking for work, he'd hand them over to you.
Yeah.
And he mentions two specific names, which is Alan Davis and Cliff Robinson, who came through that process. Tell us a little bit about how Alan first came out.
Well, with Alan, I'd been doing some Marvel stuff and things, but with Alan, he was easy because Alan really wanted to draw comics with an absolute passion. And it was just, I mean, I've just shown you the 2008 on the Tube where we reenacted Alan Davis coming to work on 2000, right? But Alan's a delight to work with. It was no problem at all. It was straightforward. He knew what he wanted to do, and we just kind of went through a bit more of the technical stuff and things and the production stuff. Cliff Robinson, I knew his brother Andy Robinson when I was in the Cubs before I went to grammar school.
Wow.
He didn't go to the same school as me, but he lived in Galston, which is a bit next to Yarmouth. And we were the same age, and we hung out, and I think we did judo together and stuff. And then we both ended up at the same grammar school, which was a pretty brutal affair. And we both decided quite early on we wanted to be long-haired and listen to progressive popular music of sorts. So we stayed friendly. We were friendly for, on and off. But then I think he went off to a commune, I think, at some point, in about the fifth form or something. Some of the guys did. Yeah. And I was at moved schools and things. So I'd see Andy once in a blue moon, but I knew him really well. I mean, he was family pretty well, because Cliff was obviously the annoying little brother, so I didn't really know Cliff. And so I knew Andy. And in fact, I think the last time I'd actually had an interaction with Andy, other than just a casual hello in passing and things, was when I was at art college, and it was in the last year I was there. I went into the Life room, and there was Andy standing there bollock naked as the new Life model. Right, and I had to point out it's something I hadn't seen since we'd last played football at school in the showers. And so that's the last time I saw him, and now he's sadly dead, which is really sad. But I met Cliff because I went back to my old art college, and he was doing graphics, I think. Yeah, he's doing graphics. And so he came to stay with us, I think, the first time he came up to London and things. So I said, well, if you want to come up, and so that's how he started working for 2000.
One thing that I do remember is that the four dark judges, which
I had to fill in some of it, didn't I?
Yeah, Cliff does an episode and you do an episode.
He got a bit overwhelmed by it, so I had to fill in some bits of it and things. Obviously, it was not my intention to draw any of that, but I had to sort of just help him out a bit of that. Well, not help him out, because he was given something. Yeah. Because he obviously really wanted to draw like Brian, which is in itself having tried to do that and things, it's a very hard thing to do because Brian's it's very special what he could do. And Cliff was working hard, but it just got out of hand. It was really getting to him. So I think Steve said, "Can you help with this?" And I said, "Yeah, I can." Because obviously you can't ask Brian to do it. Because you can't ask Brian to. That would have been taken longer, I suppose. So so that's why I did that. I'd also say that in the whole having people to stay, when John Watkiss wanted to work for 2000 AD, he came and stayed at mine as well. And I've got to say this, I've never really forgiven him for the fact he kicked the gravel out of a plant into the rented video recorder, which even now, the guys show the flat with comes, who was that bloke that destroyed the video? I said, he's gone on to great things. I think he's an art director in Hollywood now. So. Oh, what a fantastic figure, what a fantastic anatomy artist he is as well. Yeah. But that's what 2000 used to be like that. If people would stay at people's, and it was kind of quite sort of, it was kind of friendly and things.
Well, it seemed very much like a network of friends built around a business.
Yeah, that's it exactly. It was that exactly, and we used to, we instigated the boys' night outs, which kept on going for years. I mean, there was loads to start off with, and then the core for a long time was Brian, Dave, Mick, Kevin, think that's it, Brian, David, Kevin, and myself. And we did this for years and years with differing, various. When there's Americans in the country, the Americans had come on it. So Walt Simonson's certainly been on a few, and I think I'm trying to think whoever the Americans were, some of the other guys like Joe Staten and Paul Levitz and some of those guys used to. I think we'd go out to the pub and go for a pizza and things.
Right.
That's what we used to do on Thursday nights once in a while. In the later days, I think it was just the 4 or 5 of us, and we'd go to Dock They Were, because nobody wanted to go to Forbidden Planet if they could help it, and we'd they'd go out for a pizza and go to a pub. We used to meet in this pub which was on Charing Cross Road, and we didn't know what the pub was called, but it was known as the Freddie Mills.
Right.
Now, Freddie Mills was a boxer who was famously murdered in, I think, probably the early 60s, late 50s.
Yeah. And
all I can tell you about Freddie Mills, I didn't know who Freddie Mills was until I looked at it later, and it was Dave who called the pub Freddie Mills. He was found in a skip in the front of this pub, and it's the one next to Foyle's. It's the one that's set back slightly. It's sort of modern, incongruous. It's not there now, probably.
Right,
okay. Crossrail, right? And all I can know about Freddie Mills is when Eamon Andrews had to have This Is Your Life done on him, Freddie Mills was the guy who did it, because he was a boxer as well.
Right.
So we used to go to this. We used to have this sort of old version of London that wasn't like the real place at all. Well, that's also the pub where we'd been on a B&O one night, and we're all standing there having a drink, and a girl suddenly realises her handbag has been snatched, so she calls the police. The police get there and say, does anybody see who was standing there? So Dave starts drawing, and we all start contributing to it. And that's true.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we all sort of had arms, and I think he looked a bit more like this.
Yeah, fantastic. But, just coming back to the whole subs piles thing, because that's one aspect that having talked to various editors over the years, that's one aspect that they've always struggled to find time to go through the subs pile and actually find new talent that they think is worth nurturing, and then having the time to actually nurture it. I mean, how much of your time was taken up with thinking, well, this person's got a little bit of potential?
Well, you could see that. Yeah, see the difference. Because remember that lots of the stuff was coming from kids, but then some was coming from people who were a bit older. I remember one guy just wrote this letter, and he gave me a list of all his qualifications, and he wanted to work out of it, but didn't actually send any drawings. I had to write back to him. And so I listed my qualifications, including my 25-year-old swimming and my membership at the Tufty Club, and said, well, I'd be very happy if you want to send me some drawings to look at. They were pretty nice. Most of the people that came up, there's a few guys. There's a guy called Steve Kite, I think, had some work out of it. And there's a few other guys that we gave, had bits and pieces of work out of it and things. Because if there was people that were working, if they had an idea what they were doing, you'd try and encourage them, get them, usually in the annuals or some specials and things.
Let's talk about the annuals, because certainly that was some of my first contact with 2000 AD was the early 80s annuals. Now, based on what Steve said in his book and what Dave Bishop put the power over, I mean, these were quite significant money spinners for IPC, weren't they?
Absolutely.
But you had a very, very tight budget.
Yeah, if we're lucky to get a budget, you'd have to look for every bit of artwork that was knocking around that hadn't been used. Now, annuals before, and I'm sure I know did this in an interview, annuals before, I know the first Dread annual that we did, Alan and I did, had been, you get some text story illustrations, you get a long text story, you put it in big type, and you put it onto a sugar paper annual, and you probably add a bit of it's usually two colour things, so you'd add a bit of colour to the couple of illustrations, and you'd spread it out, and you'd find any old strip that was knocking around, and you'd probably fill up pages like that. Then you'd have a crossword, a word search. I think there's one puzzle section which I actually credited to A.A. Anagram, which was Howard Grant, which I'm still slightly pleased with. Obviously, that's really bad, isn't it? You make a joke like that and you're pleased with this many years later. But I don't know that Lucy, my wife, will tell you that she's sat up in a Tottenham flat filling in the black squares in the crossword. Yeah. So, but you do it like that. But what I never said this before, is when I was a kid, annuals were just like this. Yeah. And then they did a Dalek annual, which might probably called the Dalek book, but sadly haven't got it. I don't probably find a copy of it and be bothered to buy it. And it was full of great features, and it had no Doctor Who in it. That was quite good. It had the Dalek. It was just about the Dalek. Yeah. And it'd have things like a landscape with this is what a planet looks like when the Daleks have left, or a feature about what Daleks were like. So the fact that a Dalek can actually generate enough energy to light a city the size of Birmingham.
Right.
The fact it can travel at 60 miles an hour on a motorway, it's like, but it was all Dalek related. And there was like end papers of all the different Dalek vehicles they flew in and things. So I always wanted to do annuals that you try and be as inventive as you could with the stuff you had, and Alan was the same. So we just try and come up with stupid features, basically. And as you can tell the ones that got the stupid features in. But of course, then you had the budget for some colour artwork.
Yeah.
So I think the first things, Mickey did those fantastic colour things. They were sent off to Italy to be printed. So they come with fantastic, and the colour proofs came back, and you just go, oh, this is absolutely immaculate.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely. So we always kind of tried to do as best we could with them and things.
Because you can tell when something is a little bit of filler. You know, certainly as the 80s go on, the polish increases.
Yeah.
But you get things like, you know, Mick McMahon's How to Draw Judge Dredd, Ian Gibson's How to Draw Judge Dredd. I mean, the sheer number of artists now I speak to who go, that was what made me want to be an artist.
Yeah, how to draw a Dalek.
Oh,
This is where this comes from. This is all the things that so the Mickey, I can remember getting Mickey to do that. And apparently somebody's made a statue of that.
Yeah.
Planet
Replicas,
Yeah, no. So where's mine? That's the question. So that was me saying, can you do this? How to draw in stages and things.
Yeah.
And there was things that I really liked, and there's things I'm sure I must have done it at some point. Which is, or they did it. What I always want to do is things like there's those features that used to be in Marvel Comics. So this is the Baxter Building. So it was a cutaway where the Fantastic Four lived and things. Those sort of things. And there's a thing about, and I know it's reprinted in the British reprints. I think I had it originally in colour. Iron Man putting on his armour, right? So he puts on the gauntlets, and there are little electromagnets that slide the sleeves up to the shoulder bits and things.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that. I always thought that's the stuff you want to do with Judge Dredd. And if you remember, if you've ever seen the film Electroglide in Blue, right, which is about an American motorcycle cop, which is quite appropriate for Judge Dredd. It starts off with, you don't see the guy, but you see him putting on his American motorcycle gear. So you see him clip on the thing, put the gun on, put the boots. You know, it's like all the gear goes on and things. And it's those sort of things that would make perfect Judge Dredd things. If anybody could figure out how Mickey had got the things to go on in the first place, obviously. So it was just trying to be inventive with it. And the budget would cover some cheap colour artwork. But of course, the artists fancied to go doing some colour stuff because you very rarely got to do it. So, you know, Mickey would mix up a couple of buckets of paint. I think he was sharing a studio with Dave Gibbons at the time. And Dave would say, what you got in the bucket there? And he'd say, I was doing a Judge Dredd angle, are you, Mickey? And
I mean,
we just didn't get paid. All it was, the budget didn't involve Alan and I getting paid to be sitting up the Kingsreach Tower till 11 o'clock at night doing it. I think was the deal.
Then, I mean, that was going to be my next question. Then why? Why sink that sheer amount of money into something that, as far as the company was concerned, was throwaway?
Well, they didn't put that much money into it, if you think about it, because they were paying for the artwork, but we were using a lot of it. They were paying for some good bits of artwork. The rest of it was just put together. So you'd say the annual would be, you'd have 2 colour stories, you'd have maybe another strip or something, but the rest of it would be stuff that wasn't used. So Casanova's stuff was used in an annual originally we had knocking around. That had been done for something, it had been bought, and then it was never used for whatever reason. That was resized and redone. So the annual it was like you had some good bits of it, and you had to make the rest sort of match the good bits, so you didn't go through the boring bits. Okay, but if you sold, remember what the sales figures of 2000 AD were? They were about 100,000 a week. And you're going to sell a fair number of annuals to the people that want that, because they started selling them they were put together in the summer for the next Christmas, so they're always a year behind and things. And every kid got an annual. Every kid still gets an annual, I presume, except now it's probably a Take That annual or whatever. I think that's probably changed the thing. But annuals were annuals. Everybody had them. That's why you'll see so many of them in jumble sales, in junk shops and things, because, and if that was your comic, you would have the annual for that.
Was it a degree of kind of pride, I guess, that yes, we've got no money for this, but we still want it to match the quality of the weekly?
No, I think what it was, and the other thing is Alan would write something and I'd draw it, we'd pay ourselves a little bit. We were very good rates.
There we go,
No, because you'd be paying, you're doing it for 50 quid a page or so, whatever, half the normal rate. But it was the only way to get anything out of it. And so we just, it's like somehow we've got to get something for doing it. And just do it, because it's also a part of your job. I think, actually, we came to the conclusion eventually there was a budget for it. It was just that it was a bit like something to do with Sopranos, that people at the top have their cut, people below them have their cut. By the time the people are actually doing it, there's no cut left.
Yeah.
You're still going to pay the artists that do some of it something because their agents want their cut. It's that. I know there's an element of that, and I know that there were occasions on which senior executives of the juvenile group and things did put themselves down to do the annuals. So one particularly high-powered person used to do the Look and Learn annual, famously had the wrong flags on the top of Everest, and another one was pulped because they had the labelling wrong on which were poisonous fungi and which ones were not. Okay, and they were the end papers, so that one had to go as well. Yeah, so
Wow.
So yeah, these things did happen. I know these could be stories that Kevin told me from my previous, before I started,
Yeah.
apocryphal, but maybe not.
And in terms of your day-to-day work on 2000 AD, I mean, it's actually probably one of the most varied jobs of 2000 AD at the time, because you're touching on so many aspects. You're dealing with new artists, you're bodging, putting copy lines, etc., on stuff. You're dealing with kind of pre-production stuff. What was your feeling about it at the time? Was it just a lot of fun? Was it hard work? Was it rewarding?
It was great. It was just a great job. I mean, I knew I was going to go freelance eventually. So
Yeah.
if you're going to have a job, it was like the best job I could possibly imagine having. When I got to be the art editor, it was like a weird thing. We moved office sites. So we had an office that was a corner of the King's Reach Tower, and we had to move office, but we moved sort of half an office because Gil Page wanted a bigger office and he wanted the corner office and a bigger corner office.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the corner office thing until I was a lot older, but apparently corner offices are the thing you want. Anyway, so Gil wanted that. So we moved half an office along. So there was then a bit in between it was like a sort of block of IPC King's Reach Tower window sort of block thing between us.
Yeah.
So we had a sort of separate thing. So just get on with it and things. Steve would be seeing people coming in and things. Steve would tend to deal with people bringing stuff in and the agents and things. I'd just sit there and get on with it. There was a couple of assistants to start off with, and then I had this fantastic assistant, Paul Leatherland, who basically was fantastic because he'd just do things like I wanted them done. So so I was quite sort of fussy about stuff, and Paul would do it. He'd just sit there and you'd end up having to change detail on an imprint, which is in 4-point type, and you'd end up doing with a scalpel and sort of doing that stuff and things. And he was just really good at it. He was excellent. And there's those things, because you're doing camera-ready artwork, there's all that thing, anything with an edge has got to be painted around it with processed white and things, so you don't get a shadow and things. Stuff like that. So the actual production, given the limitations of it, it was done as, we produced artwork as well as we could do it.
One thing I wanted to ask about, and I've got Rufus sent us these, was the cover roughs that you did.
Oh yeah.
For that were sent to artists,
Yeah.
and now I'd seen in Thrill Power Overload before that these had been mentioned, but I hadn't realised just how close to the original artwork your roughs were. I mean, these were your designs.
Well, Rufus has got them all, so if you ever want to see any of them, you can ask him. He'll let you see them. He was trying to do something with them. Yeah, no, they were absolutely and they just do.
Yeah,
exactly. That was the thing. They'd do it if they did. I mean, they just jet like hell as they go. What do you know? I don't have a Mickey on that one. And this is like that artwork, right?
So this is the 85 2000 AD.
Oh, you said the thing as well. But the thing like that is because you planned. We knew what. The nice thing about an annual is hardly anything to go on it. Okay.
Yeah.
If you tell them where the logo is, you can see Mickey just allowed exactly what done. He did it exactly right.
Yeah.
But as he said, he'd never drawn Rogue Trooper before, so I don't remember moaning about that. But I think in the end it worked beautifully.
Yeah.
But bearing in mind that is Pantone sheeting.
Oh,
it
really?
It had to be stuck on. It was awful. There was no way of. You couldn't do it.
So that's cutting it out
That's
and then
cut
putting it
out.
over the
Yeah,
top.
absolutely. That is actually cut. That is Pantone.
Wow.
And so these, I think these are too. I'm pretty certain these were as well. They're right actually. Yeah, they're all pretty much as they. Yeah, I think a lot of them are still black and white. I think I just. I did that. I really liked doing that. It's good fun because what we could do is if we knew what was going on the cover, and that you could trust the people to do exactly what you'd asked for, you didn't have to worry about the cover. When the cover came in, it'd just be strapline and logo on it, and it's done because you haven't got to. You'd kind of half thought it already. And what would happen is Steve would give me part of the covers he wanted for the next, say, 4 or 6 issues.
Yeah.
And while I had time to do it, when I wasn't doing anything else, I'd knock out some cover roughs and he'd just get them off to the artists and things.
Because I mean, these are iconic covers. You know, I mean, we've got the 85 annual here. We've got the Starborn Thing Dread cover that Mick did. I mean, it's obviously it's Mick's work, but you're providing them. It's almost it's not like the tail wagging the dog or anything like that. But I don't think most people would ever appreciate just how much involvement.
Well, if you think about this, okay, so you've got the thing like the Sky Chariots one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I know what the Sky Chariot's going to look like. I know it's got to fit in that space and things.
Yeah.
Now, I can get Mickey to do a lovely picture of a Sky Chariot's fitting it and things, but I'm also aware that we might have to put something else on it, we might have to do that, so it was easier to do it like that, and of course it was just fun doing it, and I was like, I'm sure there's a degree of resentment. In fact, there are a couple with a little bit of back and forth with Mr. Gibbons on the subject. But hey, you know, it's one of the few things where I did get to. You know.
Well, it's this note on the Judge Dredd annual from 1985. Dear Carlos, here is the colour rough for the 85 JD annual cover. I leave it to you to improve, capital letters underlined, position/pose of figures. It is intended to give you the, quote, feel of the cover, not, capital letters underlined, to tie you down completely. So you kind of slightly softening struggling the pill a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it was just to say, you know, because I knew Carlos as a much better artist than I was. But the thing is, I knew what we needed to have for the cover, and that is the thing. And it was, you know,
were these something that were being done before you?
No. I think we started doing that. I think I probably started doing that. Probably did it roughly when Cole was still there because Cole would let me do things like that. He would just say, "Do you want to do this?" Or, you know, it's that sort of. I mean, because I liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, I liked comics still, and Alan had grown up on Marvel, and he loved comics too. And we also read loads of science fiction. Alan and I went through. I mean, I've never read science fiction since, I think, but we go through 2 or 3 books a week, you know, on the tube, whatever. And you'd come up with something, you know, you'd be reading Philip Dick and you'd come up with something that would suggest something, you just try it and things. Obviously the thing is with letterpress and things, it's quite, you get a limit on what you can actually do.
Yeah.
And it's really nice when you can do, even with line stuff and things, it's really nice when you get a really nice sharp colour on it and things. And that's sort of, you just force the issue with covers and things, you just kind of see what you can do that's different.
I mean, it's interesting that there was that degree of art direction because nowadays, you know, people supply Matt with a handful of roughs and he goes, "I love that one," as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, but think about that. You see, it's gone like that. So basically, the artist probably doesn't mind. But in those days, remember, it was a job. We were doing things to pay mortgages and things. It's not fair to have said to, say, Dave, give me 6 rough ideas and I'll choose one, because that's just vaguely insulting anyway. But what a waste of his time. Much better to give him a rough he doesn't like and he can do a better version of. Because the thing is, it shouldn't be down to that. It's a bit like they changed this idea and they did start doing this instead of. I can remember Alan Grant at the time saying this. At one point, if a writer was going to write a new story, this is probably more American, but I think it's probably the same with things like Judge Anderson. He'd be asked, he'd have a get together with the editor. They'd have a chat about it, they'd discuss the storylines and things, and the writer would go away, he'd do a draft, he'd send it, and that would be it, and they'd go ahead with it. You wouldn't have to come up with proposals for it first, and I'll choose between these. Because, of course, there have been, not, I hasten to say, in 2000 AD, but I've heard of instances where there are certain rather unscrupulous editors that have basically gone through ideas from people and just given it to their favourite writer and said, "Well, we've got this, can you change it a bit so they can't tell?" You know, it's that. So I think it was probably better to do it like this. And of course, it's a matter of time. It was a weekly comic, remember, so anything extra that people did had to be fitted in with drawing 5, 6, 7 pages of artwork anyway. So So
what were your favourites at the time? What were the strips that really stood out? I mean, you've already mentioned Nemesis.
I liked all of them. I liked. There's nothing. I think I could find something to be said for most things, but if I could choose the things I didn't like the most, and it's not because of the artwork or anything, it was just I didn't really like sports stories.
Right.
We'd all seen Rollerball, and I think that was enough. I was at art college with one of the girls that was one of the extras in Rollerball, so it's like I had to have enough of this. The Harlem Heroes on television was funny.
Yeah.
Harlem Globetrotters. Globetrotters on television. It was funny. The Harlem Heroes, Artie Kruger was okay, but the rest of it did start wearing a little bit thinner, didn't it? But I suppose it was still a groundbreaking in its way. But I mean, you could take anything. You could take. I know which of my favourite stories by the people that did them. So, with say Kevin and Mickey, I really liked when they did working together on Roadbusters.
Yeah. And
they were sort of riffing off each other and things. There was some wonderful stuff, and Dave also doing stuff on that. With Dave, Rogue Trooper, I was thinking was just those first few episodes of Rogue Trooper. I kept photocopies in the office, and when somebody came in, they wanted to know about storytelling, and you go, don't try and draw like Brian. Try and learn to tell a story like Dave. And it was that, you could draw like Dave. If you draw like Dave, it'd be marvellous as well. But it was this thing about storytelling, and use that as an illustration of what, not how to do it, but what the sort of thing you should be looking for, the storytelling, not the sort of finish and things.
And how much influence do you have on which artists drew a series? Because I know Steve makes reference to the fact you weren't all that keen on Brian Talbot taking over on Nemesis for the Gothic Empire.
Well, I just think because I like Brian. Brian's I got extremely well with Brian, and but I just thought he should be doing something. If Brian had a sort of organic look, and I think basically Kevin's spikiness was what really drove Nemesis. That's that look and things. And I probably didn't think it was probably the best thing, but then you can have an opinion. It doesn't really matter. That's that's the way it works.
But it was still the editor who was making the decision.
Oh yeah, Steve had that say in things, but you could sway him and things. And anybody that said that I got to not send any artwork unless the artwork was needed to be changed drastically, which is very, very rare.
Yeah.
We would never send it back to be done. So anybody that suggests that there'd been a story of some sort where I kept on sending it back to the artist, they would. I tell you, Steve would never have let me do that. I promise you. Yeah. So I don't think we did it like that. I think I could have opinions about it, and I think they were valid. But I mean, I think with something like Nemesis and Brian doing it, if Pat liked that, Pat, it was his story, and he liked it. If Kevin was okay with it, because the thing is that. There was a bit of disappointment with some of the artists that left, and they left because they wanted a little bit. I think they just wanted to be treated slightly better by the company. They wanted a little bit more money and a little bit more respect for what they were doing. When it came to people were making a fortune. I know there's people that have made a fortune and in some cases lost a fortune off the reprint back of people that were putting all this effort into it.
I mean that was a real bone of contention, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
When those reprints started.
Well, particularly as the person that reprinted them said when he started doing that, if you guys help me out, I'll make sure you always do okay out of it.
Right.
And in fact, I actually did the stationery for the first iteration of that company for him, which I'm pretty sure I didn't get paid for as well. So, and I think that was a bad deal because the thing is that you can't say that you weren't making any money out of it when you suddenly build an empire based on the 2000 AD sort of blood, sweat and tears. Because the guys were doing it out of passion, and then they were seeing their stuff just reprinted and not really getting. If anything was paid for, it was hardly anything. There was the argument, IPC wants it all. That wasn't the case at all.
Yeah. One other issue towards the end of your time at 2000 AD was returned artwork.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, how was that? Did that come about purely because the artists were starting to say, "Well, actually, we'd quite like our stuff back"?
No, people had wanted their artwork back for ages. There wasn't a market for it, but it was slight people getting the suggestion there was. But they put so much effort in, they wanted to see them having it, not somebody else having it. Particularly if it was being reprinted. They obviously would never get the rights to the image, but they would get the rights to the physical image. And remember, the NUJ deal on that, if you're a cartoonist, was the artwork physically belongs to you. And actually, European copyright law says artwork that you produce as an artist, the physical artwork belongs to you. And you still have the right to have that back. It's the same for photographers. They own what they used to do is the photographer actually owns the negatives. So IPC used to supply the photographers for the photo strips and things with the film. It's that you can see how that would work.
Yeah.
But the issue was with the artwork back, that people would like their artwork back, but IPC were not going to give it them back because they Syndication International reprinted all this stuff abroad. Well, we might not have copies of it. They had copies of it. Just didn't want anybody to get anything, it was that sort of, there was an element of that. And I think because I kind of got on okay with pretty much most of the editorial people, I've seen, the managers and things, they've got, been there for 6 years, and I was nothing if not helpful when somebody got, somebody would. It was quite nice because somebody would be doing something and they would say, "Can you come and help with this because it's gone wrong or whatever?" And it was kind of. So when I started banging on about the return of artwork, eventually they said, it was John Sanders said, "Okay, they have the artwork back, but they're going to have to provide a film copy of it."
Huh.
And it'll cost, I can't remember, £1 each or whatever,
yeah.
for Syndication International, because we're not sure we've kept them all, because they were so careless. They sent them off to Italy and they wouldn't come back, and it was, and Syndication International was, so I think it had been owned, I'm not sure, it was probably something that was owned by the Mirror, and when the Mirror owned the comic, I can't, there was some tenuous link and things, but they had a say in what went on and things. And so I got them to agree that if people were willing to pay a small fee for each page of artwork, I would get the artwork out of the art library. And there was this thing on Southwark Street, and it was just cavernous. It was just this fantastic. It's the one you hear about. It's the Raiders Lost Ark. It's
Art 51 kind of
the
thing.
whole of the end bit of it was little packets like this of stuff like that, picture library artwork. Little tiny, solid little packets, and it was a wall of it by people like Hugo Pratt as well as Gino Dante. It's like really good stuff there.
Yeah.
And they said they'd do it. So I said to all the artists, "What do you want?" And the agents, but obviously the guys that went on B&Os were obviously had it first hand, where the agents were told. If you make a list of the artwork you want back, I will try and find it. And even if Landau's had it for reprinting, I'll see if I can get it back. And I will get it, and we'll figure out what's there. But you'll have to pay, and I'll have to send it off to have a copy of it, again, it'll have to go and be shot for a film negative, like we did for the pages anyway. So it'd have to go, we'd have to come back, and we'd have to have page, same size negative. I'm saying negative, it might have been film positive, I can't remember which way it was. And they would be, IPC could have those, I'd file them so they could keep them, and then there wouldn't be a trouble with it. You'd have to pay for them, we'd have to arrange this through the payments thing. And Mick did most of his stuff, Dave did a lot of his stuff, Kev did lots of his stuff. We found, other people said, "Oh, we got this, they'd like this." I think Brett probably had some, probably Brendan had some. People asked for the stuff back they wanted, and they sort of stuffed up the cash for it and things, which I didn't, I didn't sort of take the money, but they had to sort it out themselves. Yeah. And sadly, Brian didn't quite get around to doing a lot of his, and so he missed out on a lot of it. But there was a lot of resentment about the fact people had to pay for something that...
I'm not surprised.
Well, but if you think about it, nobody had ever had any artwork back in the history of publishing. Yeah. So it wasn't like we'd all been getting our artwork back before that in 2008. There was a thing the size of, as I've said, of IKEA full of artwork that had never been returned. And if people wanted it back for the first time, I think if you're Brian, it's £1 for a page of artwork. Although it's a bit annoying, have the artwork back first and complain about it later. And it was sad because I really wanted to find as much of this stuff as possible, and because it was going off to be typed and reprinted and things, it was more important than ever to try to nail down which pages came back and things. So we found a lot of it, and then I left. And that was it. I knew it was a finite time for doing it. It wasn't done before I left, because I left, and then Maxwell had bought the company. They moved offices. They changed the whole thing. They moved the art library. They destroyed a lot of stuff, and what they didn't destroy, they took down to somewhere in Vauxhall. And it was sharing a warehouse with somebody that stored toilet paper at the time. So it all went into the hands of some dodgy bloke. I did discover quite recently that the reason that there was so much Massimo's Bolognelli's artwork knocking around is because he couldn't afford to have it sent back to Italy, which I think is really very, very sad. But I mean, that's just one of those things. And Carlos had nowadays, in the end, people got their artwork back without paying for it. Because if you think about it, if you were Carlos, you would be bankrupt trying to buy back all your artwork. Or Massimo had a lot. Yeah. But that was the thing with the artwork. It was not it wasn't a IPC ripping people off. It was, this is the only way you're going to get it, because they feel insecure about giving your artwork to you.
It's kind of the impression that you get of IPC was, again, as we've already discussed, is a lack of understanding of the value of what they had.
I don't think they were interested, at least what they liked, and I don't think Barry, as the group editor, would object to this. He really cared about football comics. He didn't care about 2000 AD. They didn't like 2000 AD, and it's hilariously funny that after all these years, it's the only one that's still left. and it's been like that for a few years. Okay, it'd be really cool if it was still selling 100,000 a week. I'm sure I'm sure you're.
We'd be very happy.
But everything else had fallen apart. I thought, because I used to do bits and pieces around, as I was saying, around IPC, that I was actually asked. I think it was Church. He said, "Look, Tiger's closing next issue. Do you want to do the cover for it?" And I went, "Oh, last issue of Tiger. I was born to do this. What do you want?" He said, "Oh, it's a kid on a BMX bike for some promotional thing." And I said, "I don't care. I mean, it's hard, it's big ellipses, but I'll do it." And I did it. And then they got it wrong, and it ran for another issue, so I did the penultimate one. I was so disappointed. I was so disappointed. No, but those other guys, 2000 AD is one thing, but the other guys were nice. Like Dave Hunt on Ego was fantastic. When I got blacklisted for arguing about Maxwell and reprint and money and stuff and stupid things, Dave Hunt just said, "Oh, you can't work for 2000, you can come work for Eagle." So I worked for Eagle for about 2 years.
Let's talk about that, because that was kicked off by, I think, some comments by Alan Moore in Time Out magazine about the lack of money from the creators received from reprints, and you wrote.
Well, he wrote. Yeah. He said, "Well, I'm not going to try and do this. You come from Northampton, you can do the accent."
No.
Alan Moore said, and absolutely quite clearly right. He said something along the lines of, "Oh well, creative people in comics are going to be content with what was it, something about the final slice of cake?" It was
right,
cake. Yeah. And I think I wrote a letter just went, "Oh, really let her the fucking crumbs," or something along those lines. I said it was Maxwell and Thatcher I mentioned in the thing.
Right.
They took Maxwell out of the letter, but left Thatcher in, and people complained to John Sanders, and he said, "I couldn't work for IPC anymore. This is when I've gone free." And I said, "My stupid thing." Well, Alan Grant also, of course, fussed. There was an issue about Robert Maxwell took over the company. We were supposed to get holiday pay because that was part of our contract.
Yeah.
And he decided we weren't getting our holiday pay from the previous year and things. There was other issues going on, and I just thought I'd never write a letter to a magazine again ever in my life and things. But I think it was Neil Gaiman that did the piece in Time Out.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he was working for Time Out. You'd have to check that. But
Yeah.
I think that's So I figured that he still owes me half a career, which I'm sure he can well afford. Sorry, they did this in a well-meaning way. This was, because they were trying to make a point quite reasonably. They weren't trying to get me into trouble, but they could have left the Maxwell in it.
I mean, that suggests, because you've gone 3 lines by this point, that suggests a certain degree of
stupidity.
No, I wasn't going to use that word. Anger was the word I was going to use.
No, it was irritation. I think it was a bit. I think it was a bit fed up with the whole thing. It was just a bit. It was a bit. It was a bit stupid. I shouldn't have done that. Yeah. I suppose on reflection, I should have done it more subtly. I was just, being a smart ass basically. And it was a fair point. I thought Alan had made a very, very fair point. Yeah. And I can usually remember what the quote is, and it was something. He said something about they are going to be content with just having the crumbs from the publisher's table. Right. And my comment was further to that about the crumbs and things. They were even like, I might have been eating shit, but I can't remember.
I think
it's one I did.
Shit,
I think it might be one of those. Well, Time Out was supposed to be pretty radical at the time, wasn't it? I did do something for City Limits. I did do a picture of Downing Street as an estate agent's office. Right. I think later, so I'd also done a cover for Marxism Today, so I think probably I was feeling a bit sort of bullshit at the time. So it was a bit foolish. So Alan and I both got blacklisted. He was unblacklisted about a day later because he was working with John. Right. And so he didn't stay blacklisted, but he's good because he kept the attitude, but he didn't have this sort of financial penalty. Yeah. Unfortunately, Steve and Bert decided it probably best if I didn't work for 2000 because John Sanders had said so. I think that's pretty much. I think this is how it went. Yeah. I can't be sure. Steve apologised to me for something at the convention we went to, so I'm assuming that's what he was apologising to. I've long since forgotten what it was that was annoying anyway. So, and so basically, I ended up doing lots of KP crisp packets, which I was doing anyway. So I had lots of freelance work anyway. Ian Rimmer very kindly had left. IPC and he'd gone to work for Marvel UK and he gave me work straight away. Right. And so it was just, there was that thing, but it was that sort of, it was probably a foolish thing because all I wanted to really do was work for 2000 AD and that was never going to happen because I'd annoyed John Sanders, which just makes you know he takes on it in hindsight. Alan and I often have a joke about this, and he reckons he's still blacklisted, and I'm going, well, he never was blacklisted as I was, mate. He says he's blacklisted now, of course, but, you know, yeah.
Now, one thing I did want to ask you about it, because Steve makes mention of it in his book, is Alan Grant left to go freelance, and Richard Burton came in.
Yeah.
Well, he came in and then went away. And
Well,
then
Bert came in for a while, but he was a
Yeah.
comics fan, which was probably a mistake.
Right, okay.
So.
You didn't get on, did you?
Well, I've been used to working with Alan Grant,
Yeah.
where there was quite a driven. I think Richard probably he'd done a fanzine and things, and I think when you've got a weekly comic to do, you've got to get into a more professional attitude to subbing. And I think it was a bit slower, but you had to get it done. So yes, we probably didn't appreciate. I didn't appreciate his more relaxed attitude to it. I mean, a lot of the time he did, but
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it got frustrating because you still had to get the issue out and things, so things had to be done.
Yeah.
Whereas Alan's attitude towards it, do the boring shit first, and then you can do the fun things afterwards or whatever, but it has to be done. And so when you make it slow on a weekly comic, it does get a little bit tricky because you're waiting for stuff and you're waiting for copy, and you've just got to do it really in the end.
Is that where the caricature Bert is kind of?
I think
slightly forgetful.
Well, I think actually Alan and John had written that into a Thog story already. I think Bert he'd already got his in a. But I think it was pretty much a lot of people's experience of it and things.
Right.
But then he went off and did a computer magazine with Tony Tyler, who was the one-time NME editor. And they went off and did this thing called Big K, and it was great because Doug Churchard edited that, so I got to do lots of computer game stuff.
Right.
Which I didn't like computer games, but I like doing the covers of them and magazines and things. So that was what Bert done, and he didn't come back while I was still there. I think he came back when I left. He then got to be the editor, and his great friend Alan Mackenzie got to be his assistant, or vice versa. I can't remember how this was. It was after I left, pretty much. Anyway, I think I was still doing odd bits. I still did odd bits of work with things. But I didn't really work with them very much. But Simon Geller started then.
Yeah.
And Simon Geller, as I said, that you go from one really hot sub like Alan, very creative. You get to sort of Bert slows things down a bit in the middle, and then Simon Geller comes along, and it's all sort of hot again. And we had, it was like we had great fun. And there was things when Simon was there, it's when Carl and Suggs did their record, and so we, get to go and do stuff like that. Go and see performances of that, and you go and do this, and you go do that, pool and pinball. So it's good. But you did, because he was, a trained journalist and things. The only thing I'd say about Simon is he went to work on GQ or something like that afterwards. And all I'd say is he's obviously lied about his age, because he used to be older than me, but apparently he's younger than me now. So it's one of those, weirdly.
Hope you enjoyed that, Earthlets. We've got more from Robin Smith in 2 weeks' time, so make sure you tune in and spread the word of the 2000 AD Thrillcast. Splundig Verthrig.
Alert! 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 Thrill power levels dangerously high. Alert! Alert! Read 2000 AD every week. Ask your comic book store or newsagent now. Subscribe to the galaxy's greatest comic at 2000ADonline.com. Subscribe digitally on our apps for Apple, Android, and Windows 10. And download DRM free copies from 2000ADonline.com. Alert! Alert! Stand by for urgent updates. Search for 2000 AD on Twitter and Facebook. Watch the latest videos at youtube.com/2000 AD online. And follow on Instagram at Insta2000 AD. Program complete. Shutting down.